is your time. Now go out there and take it.
Welcome to the St. Louis Blues, The Drop podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today will be our St. Louis Blues Round 1 playoff preview to where they play the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, the Blues have the home ice advantage in this playoff series, so let's hope they can take advantage of that. We're going to go over a few key points about the Blues and how they played against the Blackhawks this season, a little bit of history with them in the playoffs, and I will make my prediction at the end, and we'll see where that goes. Plus, I have a little surprise for you at the end of the broadcast here, so please make sure you listen. It's a good old song, and I don't want you to miss it. Well, the Blues have played the Blackhawks in the regular season 5 times. The Blues have won 3 of those games. And one of those games, back in November, the Blues came back from a 5-2 deficit in the first period, and they won that game 6-5 in overtime. And that was in Chicago. There was a shootout at Scott Trade Center on March 9th, and the Blues won that 3-2. And then, of course, we can't forget the game just about a week ago on April 7th when Vladimir Tarasenko scored a regulation goal with about a minute and 20 left in the game to tie it 1-1. That was a goalie battle between Elliott and Darling, the backup goalie for Chicago. And then Tarasenko got his 40th goal of the year, or 39th goal of the year in overtime to give the Blues a 2-1 win. So the Blues won 3 out of 5 games. The Blues finished second in their division with 107 points. And Chicago finished just behind them with 103. The Blues are trying to get out of the first round since 2012, and I'm sure they do not forget the 2014 Western Conference first round, where the Blues took a commanding 2-0 lead and then ended up losing 4 straight games to the Blackhawks to lose in the first round and make a quick exit. The Blackhawks won that first round 4-2. We're going to look at some major pluses that the Blackhawks have to look at for them going into the playoff series here, and probably how they feel about the series. Of course, you've got Patrick Kane, who led the NHL with 106 points, and you've got a lot of great players, on that line with Artemi Panarin and Artem Anisimov. Panarin had 30 goals. Anisimov had 20 goals. These are both guys that scored 70, 80 points in the year. Together, they've been awesome. It's in the same line. They're a great line. I think the Blues' second line can kind of keep up with them since they've been playing so well lately. The beginning of the year, I may not have said that, but, Chicago, even though they lost their final 2 games of the regular season, in their 3 prior wins, they had scored 17 goals. That's almost 6 a game. The Blackhawks come into this series somewhat healthy. Corey Crawford returned, for the final game of the season after missing 11 games. He did not look good in that last game against Columbus. He just didn't look mobile. Looked like he was out of position a lot. Maybe for them, he can come back and, after a few more days rest from that injury and look a little bit better. I don't know. In my mind, that's not a plus for the Blackhawks. That's kind of a minus because we just don't know. They just don't know quite what they're going to get out of Corey Crawford. But Darling's been playing decently. But I think if he has to go in under pressure, and the Blues put a lot of pressure on him, it could be a good series for the Blues. Duncan Keith, of course, had that 6-game suspension. He's going to be back for game 2, so hopefully the Blues can take advantage of that. And don't get me going on the Duncan Keith suspension. I think you guys all know how I feel about that. He is a Conn Smythe Trophy winner from the last 2 seasons, but I don't know if he deserved both those seasons. He's a very dirty player. The Blues are a lot more physical team than the Blackhawks. They cannot match the way the Blues throw their body around. The Blues are a much bigger team. Chicago's more of a finesse team, and I will say this, the Blackhawks are a little bit faster than the Blues, but if those big bodies can slow them down, the Blackhawks are going to have issues. The penalty kill has not been great this season. The Blackhawks, that is, there was 22nd in the regular season at 80.3%. And they allowed at least one power play goal in almost half their games. It didn't look good. It just did not look good at all. They also gave up some goals when they were on the power play, shorthanded goals. The Blues ranked 6th in power play percentage. So I think this penalty kill and power play are going to be a huge part of this series. The Blues, let's go kind of into them and see what the keys to them are winning and some of the pluses and minuses. Blues have a lot of great players. Brian Elliott, Jake Allen, you could say they're 1A and 1B. They've both been hurt this season. In fact, Allen was held out of the last couple games, tweaked something in one of the final games in the first period and left. And, we can't forget about Robbie Fabre. He's just coming back from an injury. He didn't look full steam on the last game against the Capitals, but then again, he may be trying to save some of his energy for the for the playoffs. And, they got players such as Steen, Stasny, Berglund, Jaden Swartz, Shattenkirk, Pietrangelo, and then they got some big guys in Gunnarsson and Bouwmeester. They finished second, like I said earlier, in the Central Division. Tarasenko, with his 40 goals, was 5th in goals for in the regular season. He's been a massive plus in games against the Blackhawks. He's had 5 goals and 7 points in 5 games against them. So averaging just a little under 1.5 points a game. One thing Chicago's going to have to watch out for is the Blues defense is pretty mobile. They can move the puck up. They can come into play. Even on their back line, players such as Colton Parayko had 9 goals and 33 points in 79 games. He led all of the rookies with a plus-minus 28 rating, which is awesome. So the Blackhawks have to watch for that, but also the Blues kind of have to watch some of that too because of Blackhawks' speed. They can't always push that puck in with their defensemen because then the Blackhawks are going to get a lot of 2-on-1. And you've seen some of that in the last game the Blues played against the Blackhawks, even though, the Blackhawks only scored 1 goal. They did have a lot of breakaways and 2-on-1s, and the Blues were lucky enough to have Elliott make those saves. The Blues goalies, Elliott and Allen, have been great. Elliott was 23 and 8 and 6 with a little over 2 goals a game, average 2.07, I believe. He had a league-leading a .930 save percentage in 42 games. Allen won 26 games, but lost 15 and tied 3. Had a 2.35 goals against and a .920 save percentage in 47 games. Each of them has played great when they've had to. Big minus for the Blues would say, they've had great teams for the past several years. They've lost in the first round 3 straight years. And last year they lost to Minnesota in 6 games. Did not look good at all. Minnesota was the 8th team, and the Blues had the number 1 position. And Minnesota looked like the better team. They were faster. They were on the puck. The Blues did a lot of standing around. Just didn't look good. And the last time the Blues advanced past the first round was when they were swept by, of course, the Kings in the second round, 4 straight games. The Blues have finished in the top 2 in their division in the last 5 seasons, and they just have something to prove. They have to prove that their regular season schedule is not a fluke. They have to prove that. As a Blues fan, I'm not as anxious about their scoring this year, but, and everybody says, they haven't had great success against Chicago. Well, actually, over the last several series they've played Chicago, they've won more games than Chicago has. You just take away the series in 2014 when Chicago won, and the Blues have dominated them in the previous series. And I think the last time they played before 2014 was 1993 in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. The Blues don't have as much star power as Chicago. Chicago's got Patrick Kane, Hossa, Panarin, and also Jonathan Toews. All those players can take over a game. Now, Tarasenko can take over a game when he wants to, too. Jaden Schwartz at time can. I've seen Fabry do it, but they're not as proven as these other players, such as Kane, Hossa, Panarin, and Toews. Will the Blues be able to have a physical game and force the Blackhawks to earn what they get when they come into their zone? Are the Blues going to meet them at that blue line or red line and not let them get deep into their own zone? I'm concerned that if the Blues allow a lot of play on their end, even though they've got the goaltending, that allowing all that play in their end with Chicago's players, it may give up a goal that may bite you in a 1-0, 2-1 game. So I'm really looking forward to that and see how the Blues handle that. If they're able to keep that pressure off of Elliott and keep the shots down to under 23 to 22, which I think is key for the Blues. They start letting Chicago get 30, 35 shots a game, and it's, even though Elliott's great, he's going to have to just be standing on his head all the time to win this series. And it's, I'm sounding like I'm going to pick the Blackhawks to win this series, but let's just wait and see. Which line are the Blues going to put out there? Which players are the Blues going to put out there when Kane, Panarin, and Anisimov, I know I can say his name, I say it all the time, get out there? Are they going to put out a bigger lineup? Or are they going to put out maybe a combination of Pietrangelo, Bouwmeester, Pietrangelo, Parayko? What are they going to put out there against that line? And how are the Blackhawks going to defend against some of that, the Blues' big muscle when they get down in there and the Blues start pounding them into the boards for that puck? The Blues defense can move the puck very, very well. I'm looking for this to be a good series. Most of, I guess, as you could say, the people in the know on the NHL Network and NHL.com, recently NHL.com asked 25 so-called experts of who they picked, and I think 4 to 5 out of the 25 picked the Blues. The rest of them basically just said that Chicago was a much better team, which I don't see how when the Blues beat them 3 out of 5 games. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say the Blues win this in 6 games. It could go 7. I don't think this is going to be a quick series. I know a lot of people in the Blues fan base are saying the Blues in 4 or 5. I just don't see that. Chicago's too good of a team. I think it could go 6 games. What will concern me is this. If the Blues win 2 games and Chicago wins 3 and goes up 3-2, that's what's going to concern me. In the 7th game, it'll be at home in St. Louis. But, you just don't know what's going to happen in a 7th game. I'd like to see this finished up in 6 games. The Blues, I'm going to take them in 6 games to advance, and my pick in the other series is, of course, Dallas. I think Minnesota is going to give Dallas a little bit of a harder time than people think. I think the series is going to go probably 6 games. It could go at the least 5, but I also see a 6-game series with Dallas and Minnesota. I want to thank everybody for joining me for this playoff preview. Don't forget, we're going to be back tomorrow on Thursday after the Blues play them tonight. The game is scheduled for 8:30 Central Time. You can watch them on Fox Sports Midwest, NBC Sports Network. Look for them in your area. It's going to be a great game. It's probably going to be a goalie battle. Now watch, I'll say that, and it'll be a 6-5 game or something like that. I hope you've enjoyed my preview. Thank you for joining the Drop Podcast. We're going to use this also, since we're not able to make a video podcast this week. We're also going to post this on YouTube as our podcast for the week. Logan couldn't join me on our video podcast, so we'll be using that on YouTube. And also you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter at official The Drop. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up The Drop Podcast. If we don't show up in the first page, go to the filter section at the top left of your page. Go to the channels, and we should show up when you're 1 or 2 channels, and you should be able to find our video reviews. We will have a video review tomorrow after the Blackhawks game, so watch for that on YouTube. We will also have an audio review, which I will post on iTunes. This has been Lance. Thank you for joining me. Everybody have a great game, and let's go Blues.
Hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good old hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good old hockey game. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good